If you're anything like me, you've spent the last weekend watching Inventing Anna on Netflix. I had been waiting for this ever since I learned that Anna Delvey's story was going to be made into a show. And as I watched the show and as I learned how the show ended up being made, I thought it would be interesting to make a video about how it works when you want to buy someone's rights, either rights to a literary piece or, life rights. And I thought it would be interesting to make this video using Anna Delvey as an example. If you guys enjoy this type of content, please let me know. I might make this into a series. So using real-life examples from pop culture to explain how certain things are done in the entertainment industry or how certain concepts work in IP, intellectual property, or in art. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. If you're new here, hi, my name's Aisha. I'm a lawyer and entrepreneur from Montreal, and I make videos about the law, about entrepreneurship, becoming a lawyer, and a variety of other topics. Alright, so let's start with the basics. Who is Anna Delvey? Or should I say Anna Sorokin? I'm going to link to the article from New York Magazine that kind of made her famous, so you can check that out if you'd like more detailed info about Anna Delvey's story. But basically, Anna Delvey, real name Anna Sorokin, is a Russian con artist who pretended to be a German heiress. She used to say she had a fortune of 60 million euros, and she did that in order to make her way to the top of New York society. And she kind of succeeded. She was everywhere, she was in all the big events in New York, she was hanging out with huge entrepreneurs, celebrities. Along the way, she scammed individuals, she scammed banks, she scammed hotels. However, her ultimate goal was to get a loan in order to start the Anna Delvey Foundation, which was going to be sort of a Soho house, so a social club, but art-centered. And unfortunately for her, she did not succeed. She was arrested in 2017, and in 2019 she was found guilty on 8 counts, which included theft of services and grand larceny. Now that you guys know who Anna Delvey is, how did her story make it to Netflix? In May 2018, a New York journalist called Jessica Pressler, who worked at New York Magazine, publishes an article about Anna Delvey called "Maybe She Had So Much Money She Just Lost Track of It." And of course, I will link to it below. And this article made Anna Delvey known to just about everyone who didn't already know who she was at the time. There had already been one article published by the New York Post about Anna in 2017. It was called "Wannabe Socialite Busted for Skipping Out on Pricey Hotel Bills," but it definitely did not get as much attention as Pressler's article did when it was published in New York Magazine. So the article is published in New York Magazine in May 2018. Huge hit. Shonda Rhimes stumbles upon it one morning as she is on the treadmill and becomes obsessed with Anna Delvey's story. At that very moment, she thinks, this is going to be the next story that I want to tell. And what does she do? Well, she reaches out to Jessica Pressler and New York Magazine in order to option the article. What is optioning? Optioning is buying the exclusive right to adapt a certain work. It could be a novel, it could be a short story, it could be an article, as it was with Jessica Pressler. But why is it called optioning? It's called optioning because really what you're saying is, I want to have the exclusive right to adapt this work if I can make the adaptation happen. So an option to purchase rights is usually structured in the following manner. The author of the work is going to be paid a certain amount, and usually it's going to be a small amount compared to the rest of the sums that the author is going to get if the option is exercised. And that amount is set for an option period. Let's say it's a year. During that year, the producer is going to go out and try to make that adaptation happen. They're going to try to look for funding, they're going to try to look for partners to make the adaptation happen. They're going to go around and see if there's actually any interest in doing this. Optioning allows a producer to go through that process, to go find funding, to figure out if there's any interest, to find partners without having to worry about the other person just shopping for another deal. And because sometimes it takes time to find funding and to figure out if there's any interest, there's going to be multiple option periods. So for the first option period, we said it was a year, author or rights holder is going to be paid, X amount for that option period. But if at the end of that option period, producer finds himself needing more time, then usually the agreement will be renewed for an additional option period, subject of course to the payment of a sum to ensure exclusivity. Let's go back to Anna Delvey and Jessica Pressler. Jessica Pressler isn't new to this. Another article of hers that was also published in New York Magazine, called The Hustlers at Score, published in 2015, was made into the movie Hustlers with Jennifer Lopez. She also said in an interview that her phone immediately rang after the Anna Delvey article was published. So nothing abnormal. This was a great story and a lot of people wanted to be able to tell it, but Shonda Rhimes was the one who was able to acquire the rights to the article. But Shonda Rhimes didn't just stop there. Shonda Rhimes acquired the rights to Jessica Pressler's article. She also reached out to Anna Delvey herself to option her life rights. And a contract was signed between Anna Delvey and Netflix on June 8th, which was exactly 11 days after the article was published in the New York Magazine The Cut. And on June 8th, the same day the contract was signed, was also the day that Netflix announced that they were going to adapt Anna Delvey's story into a short series. And of course, on the same day that she signed, Anna Delvey was paid $30K for the option. Before explaining what life rights are, I do want to take the time to point out that this happened very, very quickly. Oftentimes, there is a certain amount of time between the moment that the contract is signed and the moment that the option gets exercised. Why? Because it takes time. As I said, it takes time to find funding. It takes time to make sure that there's actually an interest for that project. It takes time to find business partners. It takes time to figure out if this is going to be a viable project. And this is why you'll often find more than one option period in option agreements. But here's the thing. With Anna Delvey's story, the story was already a hit. The story was already a hit online, everyone was talking about this, and obviously there was an ongoing war between all the different streaming platforms, and Netflix wanted to be first to market with this. But also, when we look at Shonda Rhimes, it makes sense that she would be able to confirm so quickly that the adaptation would be made because she had signed a 3-year deal with Netflix in 2017. So finding interest and finding funding wasn't really an issue for her because she knew that she had Netflix on her side. And not only that, she had a partner in Netflix, but she also had a very, very good story. Now let's talk about life rights. What are life rights and why should you buy them? I'm going to keep it simple. Buying life rights allows you to fictionalize someone's story or an event that happened in someone's life. And I say allow because technically you don't need anyone's permission to fictionalize someone's life. So if you don't need life rights, why do producers keep getting life rights? Why did Shonda Rhimes and Netflix decide to acquire Anna Delvey's life rights? Well, there are a few reasons. One, because it allows you to make sure that the individual whose story you're interested in is actually on your side, that they're not going to turn their back on you and sue you for defamation, for instance. Two, because it also allows you to make sure that the person whose story you're interested in doesn't go help the competition. It obviously won't stop anyone else from telling the story, but it will certainly help you avoid finding out that the person whose story you're telling is also consulting with other platforms or other producers. Another reason why getting life rights is so popular is because it also allows you to have some control over the promotion of the show, and I'll explain. In Anna Delvey's case, in order for her to be paid to consult on inventing Anna, the contract stated that she couldn't appear on talk shows. She couldn't post on social media about the events that were going to be used in the TV show, unless, of course, she had Netflix permission. The contract also stated that she could write a book about her experience, but that it couldn't be published within a year of the show's first airing date. And so because of all of this, because it allowed them to make sure that Anna Delvey was going to be on their side, because it allowed them to make sure that she wasn't going to go help the competition, because it allowed them to control the promotion a little better at least of inventing Anna, they decided to acquire her life rights. But they didn't just stop there. They didn't just stop at buying Jessica's rights to the article. They didn't just stop at buying Anna's life rights. They also bought Neff's life rights. Neff, who was Anna Delvey's friend, and who still is, I think, Anna Delvey's friend. And Neff ended up consulting on the show. So one of the things that producers and writers try to do when they tell someone else's story is to get as many point of views as possible. You want to have the option to be able to tell the story in different ways, and also it allows you to just make a much more well-documented, fictionalized version of the story that you're trying to tell. Now, I don't know what was in Neff's agreement, but I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually learned that Shonda Rhimes was going to make a spin-off of Inventing Anna based on Neff's point of view, the impact that Anna had on her filmmaking career, the impact that she had on her relationships, how she lived through the Anna saga, etc. This leads me to talking about choosing whose life rights to purchase. As I said, you don't need an option or you don't need to purchase life rights in order to tell someone's story. But what do you do as a producer or as a streaming platform when you can't get the rights to the main character in the story, or when you can't get the rights to the article that made him famous? Either because you weren't fast enough, because your competitors had better offers, whatever the reason is, what do you do? Well, you buy someone else's life rights who was also in the story that you're interested in telling. And this is exactly what happened to Rachel Deloche Williams, Anna's ex-friend, and one of the people that she also ended up scamming. So in Inventing Anna, we see Vivian Kent, who is the fictionalized version of Jessica Pressler, struggling to reach out to Rachel. She keeps calling her, she wants to get her side of the story, and she just doesn't answer. She eventually learns that the reason why Rachel is not speaking to her is because she also decided to write an article about her side of the story from her point of view and sell it to Vanity Fair, who was then her employer. The article was called "As an Added Bonus, She Paid for Everything, My Bright Lights Misadventure with a Magician of Manhattan." Well, that article ended up getting optioned by HBO. I say the article, honestly, there are conflicting reports. Sometimes you read that the article was optioned, sometimes you read that Rachel's life rights were optioned, sometimes you read that Rachel's book, because there is a book, that Rachel's book was optioned. It might have been all three. But anyways, HBO purchased the rights to tell her story. So Rachel's article was published in 2018, I think about a month before Jessica Pressler's article. Her book came out in 2019. So as you can see, not being able to get someone's life rights doesn't stop you from still making a story about them. Not only because technically you do not have to do so, but also because you can always buy someone else's life rights. It also shows that people who have gone through common experiences can all benefit from their story, but separately. So obviously, Anna Delvey got paid. She got paid $320,000 in total. That includes the option fee of $30K. Neff also most likely got paid, although we don't know exactly how much. But Rachel also got paid. Rachel got paid for the Vanity Fair article. She got paid $8,300. For the HBO show, potentially $335,000, which would include a $35,000 option fee. And obviously for the book, which is another $300,000. So let's talk about making payments to purchase someone's rights, but more specifically also making payments to someone who is in prison. So Anna Delvey signed with Netflix in 2018, and while she was already in prison, she hadn't been convicted yet. She was in prison pre-trial. So the option price was paid, the $30,000, not an issue. However, Anna Delvey did end up getting convicted, and the rest of the sum was due once she was already a convicted felon. Quick little piece of information. When an option is exercised, which means when you actually confirm that you're going to be able to adapt the work or the life rights that you are buying, that's when you usually get the rest of the sum that is due to you. You'll also oftentimes see on top of the option fee, on top of the purchase price, sometimes a percentage of net profits that they're also entitled to. But obviously that's only once the adaptation gets made and is commercialized. Now let's go back to paying a convicted felon. In the US, in various states, including New York, which is where Anna Delvey was convicted, there is what is called a Son of Sam law. Son of Sam laws prohibit convicted felons from profiting off of, retelling the story of their crime. Son of Sam laws exist in various states across the US, but they also exist in certain provinces here in Canada. In New York, you're required to contact the Office of Victims Services if a payment of more than $10,000 is going to be made to a convicted felon. And that's what Netflix did. They reached out to OVS. OVS froze the funds that were paid to Anna, and they notified the victims so that the victims, namely the banks, could file a suit in order to be compensated. So $170,000 were paid in total to two banks, Citibank and City National Bank. There was a third bank that Anna scammed, Signature Bank, but they declined to file a lawsuit. And if you're wondering about Rachel, Anna Delvey wasn't found guilty of scamming Rachel, and so because she wasn't part of the victims, she couldn't file a lawsuit and have a part of the Netflix funds. There was some money left after paying that $170K, of course. A part of it went to go pay her lawyer's fees, and the rest she was able to keep. Now, this seems to have been done fair and square by Netflix. However, one thing to know about Son of Sam laws is that they are far from being perfect. One, they're often challenged. They're not only challenged in the US, but they're also challenged here based on freedom of expression. I'll link to some relevant articles on the topic in the description down below. But also, they're not impossible to avoid. You can make deals with third parties. It also complicates proper monitoring when the other party isn't in the same jurisdiction. So finally, what happens when an adaptation doesn't get made? We now have a Netflix version of Anna Delvey's story. We might get an HBO version of Anna Delvey's story from Rachel's point of view. Rachel already got to be part of an HBO docuseries called Generation Hustle. And as I said, I'm not sure if they optioned the article, the life rights, and the book, if they used one of the works for the docuseries and then they're going to keep the rest for a fictionalized series. But I do think it is a fair question to ask if they were planning on making a fictionalized version of Rachel's story, which hasn't happened yet. The only thing we know is that Lena Dunham is working on the show, but let's say that HBO optioned all of those rights in order to make a fictionalized version of Rachel's story, and that just doesn't happen. Well, a lot of times in option agreements, you will find turnaround clauses. So turnaround clauses are clauses that allow you to buy back the rights to your story if the story isn't made after a certain number of years. A certain number of years starting from the moment that the option is exercised. Generally, you have to pay back the out-of-pocket fees that were incurred by the producer, but the great thing about turnaround clauses is that they allow you to reshop the story with other producers. That is it for me. I hope that you guys found this interesting. If you have any questions, please leave them below. If there are any topics that you would like me to make a video about, please let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye!